Okay. Now, history of maintenance. Okay. Hey, you laugh at this picture, right? But think about it. See that bow and arrow? If that wasn't sharp, what do you think that big old bear would have done to that person? Eaten them, right? It's like, oh my gosh. You know what? I didn't have that bow and arrow on there right. So one, it didn't stick or it fell off as you're getting ready to throw that spear. It's like, oh, this had no maintenance plan, right? So there you are with a stick, right? That's not going to work. So if you think about maintenance, and some folks, kind of chuckle, but it goes way back into what? The past, right? Castles. When they built castles, I'm still waiting to find plans on a castle somewhere and how they built it. I don't know if we'll ever find them. It's probably something that they worked on over years, right? As long as they had manpower and resources. But if you consider that castle, do you think that needed maintenance of some sort? How about that moat that's around it? Make sure it has full of alligators and water so the enemy don't come and cross it, right? But if you think about it, castles didn't have what? Didn't have a plumbing system, infrastructure, didn't have power, and didn't have ventilation. So everything they built when it comes to castle, natural ventilation, right? Some sort of infrastructure where you use the facility somewhere, right? And then lighting, they had candles more likely, right, for the interior side or fires and so on. But out of that, chimneys and so on, they had some sort of maintenance program, okay? They had to, okay? Did I put my mic back on? Okay, am I set? Okay. So let's go further up there. How about that guy? Okay, here you are. You're getting ready to attack this castle, right? Because you want to take it over because they got all these spoils that you want, right? So you start cranking that baby up and the rope breaks. Now what do? Right? So the enemy's waiting for you to throw these big old rocks, right, to tear down this castle, but your catapult's not working anymore. Maintenance plan? What do you think? Well, who checked the ropes? And you drug these things 1,000 miles, right, to get to this particular castle so you can bombard it, and none of them work. What do you think? A successful battle strategy? Probably not. Somewhere along the line, they probably had a maintenance program for this, believe it or not, this catapult to make sure that it's functional, it's operational. It sounds quirky, but it's true. Everything going back, okay, to the age of time had some sort of maintenance program. You get into the Industrial Revolution. Now what we introduce buildings with lighting infrastructures, ventilation in some cases, right? Probably very minimal when you talk about the early, turn of the century, the early 1900s, late 1800s, probably very low when it comes to fire, life safety. But again, you still had an infrastructure. So you had a maintenance program. Elevators. Imagine going up in an elevator that was built in 1880. What do you think? Would you want to trust that elevator going up in 1880? I would look at the elevator, says, hey, that's cool. I says, where's your real elevator, right? Because again, but back then, people really didn't know any difference. All they knew is the elevator went from first floor to the second floor, and I don't have to take the steps. But somewhere along the line, they required a maintenance plan for that, especially when they failed, okay? And especially if they hurt individuals, okay? And they weren't operable, okay? And of course, you get into the buildings, multi-story, so conveyance systems, ventilation systems. So now you're talking about maintenance programs that were now being introduced into the industry. Now, believe it or not, you would think, well, where was facilities management at this point in history? Facilities management was nowhere to be found. Facilities management was really never identified as a true profession until 1979. That's my time frame. So if you think about it, it's only been around since 1979, but you had buildings, right, from the dark ages, right up to the Industrial Revolution. Well, where was facilities management? I mean, somebody had to maintain these buildings. Well, typically you had a landlord that maintained the buildings. And part of the buildings, make sure they didn't leak, okay, make sure that the ventilation systems work. Because really, every product that you produce out of these buildings produced a profit, okay? So as buildings become more sophisticated over time, okay, you require more robust, okay, maintenance programs. So now this building is what, maybe 16 stories? So you think about the conveyance systems, elevators, you talk about the power distribution systems, because now you got 16 floors. Well, now they went into super skyscrapers, over 100 floors, right? The tower in Dubai, some of those, they have enormous complex maintenance programs for that particular building and infrastructure, okay? But again, all required maintenance, okay? And of course, this is the modern buildings, okay? So if you take a look at this building, what do you think you'd have to maintain in this building? Just taking a look at that. That's a nice looking building, sharp. What's the first thing that jumps out on you, right? But it's what's associated with those windows. Seals, gasketing material, right? So you don't have the water leak in. What happens when water gets in contact with drywall and paint? Swells and bubbles. Then you have mold issues. Then you got indoor environmental quality issues, right, with that. So it starts with the windows, your envelope. How well are those windows sealed? So part of your maintenance program under window washing, believe it or not, please report any gasketing material that's either deteriorated or is no longer there. Other items of this particular building would be the envelope, such as your framing, your front doors, okay, your parking. This building probably has an underground parking garage that goes down several subterranean levels, right? Freight elevators. Everything to do with this building is going to have a maintenance plan to that. Okay, everything from how you sustain it, how you support it, okay, and how you administrate that program. Okay. Now, how about that building? What do you think of that building? Now, they probably have, what, navigation lights at the very top of this building. Who would want the job to change those lights? Would anybody in this class do that for $1 million a year? Would you do it for $1 million a year? For $1 million? Really? Okay, you would call to the top of this building, to the very, I don't know, this is 100 some odd stories high, right?
I'm not going to do it like, I mean, you tie it off and stuff. It's totally safe.
Well, yeah, you want to. You want a harness, right? A full body harness with several. Yeah, right? Okay. You probably want to take some alcohol before you go up there, right? To make sure you're ready for this thing. Could you imagine how much that building's swaying now? You don't want to go up there on a breezy day because you'll be selling like a sail right inside of the building. And do you think your buddy would go up there and help you down? Yeah, it's like, oh gosh, look at that. Well, I don't know what to say. What do you want to tell your wife, right? Okay. But this building here, though, it has an enormous maintenance infrastructure with that building, if you consider it. This building probably has retail. It probably has commercial. It probably has some sort of office, if not research. Down at the lower levels, probably has all its infrastructure for its air conditioning systems and power distribution. It's sewage. Imagine pumping water up to the top of this building and using the toilets. How about them apples? Okay, you just get a call from the 100th floor restrooms. The toilets aren't flushing. We got no water pressure. It's like, oh, that's a shame. Come down to the 99th floor. They're working, right? No, they all require maintenance. Because why? They're paying premium prices at that 100th floor for the view. They're paying premium square footage costs. I want my toilet to work when I expect it to work. I don't want to go down to the 99th floor, right? So those are some of the aspects when they talk about maintenance, okay? So let's take a little bit step further here. How about this? All right, wise guy, would you do that? With training, obviously, right? But you talk about what? You talk about the telescopes and you talk about the satellites, okay? They all require maintenance. Once you set them up in orbit, they're constantly being, one, monitored, and then when there is a malfunction, because you're talking about multi-million-dollar worth of investments on those components, if they fail, on how much money you lose. So part of that, believe it or not, there's a lot of private ventures of going up to service. NASA used to do a lot of it for a fee. Of course, it got too costly. So now you're having a lot of private industries considering going up to space to service a lot of these components. So what happens after that? Mars, maybe? Who knows, right? Okay. But all part of a maintenance program. Of course, here's another shot of another satellite, right? I mean, if you imagine being here in Houston, control, that says, you know, well, we want to adjust the orientation. And if they're a defense satellite, that's a whole different story. You know, we want to change the orientation to, you know, look down at this particular section of the globe, but it doesn't work. So then the question is, let's go to our backup, if you got a backup, okay? But again, every one of these aspects, that's why the QA for these satellites, before they're launched into space, they go through a vigorous, usually 1 to 2 years of pre-testing to make sure that all the components have been run through all their cycles, okay, in different types of conditions, just to minimize those failures.